Welcome.
And welcome to the Not So Perfect Couple podcast. And for those of you tuning in for the very first time, this is the Not So Perfect Couple podcast.
Remember how there's like a big intro that goes on before that we ever start talking that already says that?
Yeah, but we have some listeners with ADD, and I was just reminding them where they are.
Okay.
So the reason that we call ourselves the Not So Perfect Couple is because as much work as we've done on, in, and around our relationship, and as much as we like to learn about it,
And we continue to work on it.
we're still not perfect.
No.
Not even close.
Yeah. We've been having a rough go.
We haven't been having a rough go. We had like a disagreement this week, which we're going to talk to you all about. But
We had more than one because I remember when we were hiking through the slot canyon and I said, "Ooh, I hope that I get pissed off at you again soon so that I can do better." What was I? Remember? That was another argument. We had a couple arguments.
well, you've
the
been a
last
little
couple weeks.
fiery, I would say, but I don't know that they escalated into major arguments, other than one that we recently had about money, which, as we've told you before, and Sam has told you multiple times, that 69% of all arguments are going to be disagreements that you'll always have.
They are unresolved.
That's what I said.
Okay.
In this one today, we're going to talk about an unresolved disagreement that we will probably always have, and it's a matter of, when these things come up, how to get better at handling them. And so we probably took a step back for a day, and then we were fine. And that's kind of the way it works for us. Is we actually have even looked up stuff in our own book, like, what do we write about this one? And then we're like, oh yeah, that's good advice we gave ourselves, or we wrote ourselves, or we put out there. So every now and then we slip, catch ourselves not remembering what we know, and we have a tough couple hours. So our disagreement was about money. Sam doesn't like spending it pretty much ever, unless it's totally justified or it's her idea. And I don't really have as big of a problem with it. I feel like we'll just make more, and that will be fine. So I definitely have a more cavalier approach at spending money on certain things, and Sam does on others. Like when it comes to the kids, she doesn't even hesitate, doesn't even blink. Spend it, done. Not even thinking about it.
Yeah. See, it's not that I never want to spend money.
Yeah.
I just definitely have the way I prioritize it, which is different than you.
Yeah. Anyway, this is probably going to be relative.
But it's a balancing act,
I'm still
right?
doing our intro.
Oh God. Okay. Keep going.
This is probably going to be a relatively short podcast, because basically I'm just going to put everything out there, and you guys are going to be like, oh, well, Sam was pretty much wrong. So, and it'll be over. Everybody will agree. Sam will probably think, oh, you're right, I was wrong. And
Probably not. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to put things into the baskets of right and wrong.
Well,
we've tried to have this conversation, but it's pretty deep and complicated.
Yeah.
Because basically our whole society is built around trying to put everything into baskets of right and wrong. And our minds do that constantly.
How can you keep moving the screen so that your face is more on it than mine?
I don't know, because it's not like I'm looking hot today. This is like rolled out of bed and let's pop out a podcast.
Anyway, so when these disagreements come up, there's several things that we've learned that can help diffuse the disagreement so that you can get to communicating. Because a lot of times with us, what will happen is somebody will say something a little snarky, Sam, and then I'll get defensive, and then
Sometimes
she'll recognize that I'm a little
things.
Oh yeah, but you're way better at handling them than me. And then she'll recognize that I'm being defensive, and she'll make a comment about me being defensive, and then I'll be defensive about her saying that I'm defensive. And then we kind of, at some point, rein that in.
Well, because what happens, I think, is when you're not communicating, is you're letting your emotions get in the way of the communication, right? You're being offended. You're needing to prove someone right. Or prove yourself right. You need to, be in control. And it's not really about the issue at all.
Yeah. So in this particular instance, we agreed that we were going to spend a certain amount of money on a thing, and
It was a recreational thing.
yeah, and as it turned out, I just couldn't find one that looked like it was worth the shit for that. So we were going to have to spend a little bit more money, which I was totally fine with. Sam
But I
was
wasn't.
not.
I mean, I'm way more risk averse than Pat.
Yeah.
I don't
So
like to spend the money, especially like these are challenging times. There's a little more uncertainty than normal. And,
yeah. So she
spending
kind of
something on a recreational.
blew up at me, and I got
I got.
defensive and did my flight mode where I just didn't talk for a couple hours.
So I've noticed in the last, and I think we've talked about this, but in the last month since we've all been in lockdown, I am not taking the time and even though we have all the time in the world to respond instead of react. So when Pat said, "Oh, I found this thing and it was like close to twice as much as what we had talked about." I was
No,
like, "What the
2/3 as much.
fuck?" 2/3 as much. That's still a
That's
lot.
not close to twice. You always exaggerate
It's
to make
close
your
to
point.
twice. It's more than half.
More than half as much. Why don't you just say that then?
It's more than half as much. And then if you add on the other things that we're going to need to go with it, now we're creeping towards almost twice as much.
No,
Yes.
no.
I'm not going to respond or react.
Yeah. So
Go ahead, honey.
if there is, so that what we want to remind ourselves of, and you guys can listen in, is
this
that
podcast is more for us.
yeah. So,
Actually, I think most of them are. It's kind of us trying to figure out the things we really need to work on and hope that applies to everybody also.
yeah. So what we want to remind ourselves of is that when there is going to be a disagreement, which is totally natural and happens in every relationship, and anybody that says they never fight isn't doing it right.
There's probably a lot of that would be really unusual, unlikely, and I think even like all the researchers say it's not healthy not to argue. That means somebody's just always giving in,
yeah,
and that creates resentment, and then probably
or
the
they're
ending.
just shutting down, not sharing how they're feeling, and they're building up animosity. And
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's what you said. Only I was way more articulate. There's
Good job.
See, I never say anything snarky. The point though is that we have to try to share how we're feeling about something. And a lot of times it's a little bit passionate, right? And it just comes out. But if we can take a breath and then share how we're feeling about something,
Instead of yelling, "What the fuck? That's way more than we talked about spending."
Yeah.
If I had taken a breath in a moment, I could have said something more like, "Wow, we talked about a different amount. Like, let's have a conversation about why it's so much higher. Help me understand.
Help me understand. That's a great way.
Help me understand why you want this
Yeah,
one
because
that's going to be so expensive." And
the idea is to create safety so that you can have a productive discussion. And you're not going to end up agreeing all the time, but you can come to a I'm having a mind cramp.
well, I think for this, we just had to come up with a compromise.
Yeah. So you can come to a compromise. That's basically in a good negotiation. If both people feel like they're getting screwed a little bit, then the job is a job well done.
What?
That's the true thing about
That
negotiating.
that is not the true thing.
Yes, it is.
No, you need to read Crucial Conversations again. That is not.
I'm talking about negotiating.
I'm talking about negotiating also.
If both people feel like they're not getting, if in a negotiation, that's a freaking thing. You can look it up.
You can look it up.
In a good negotiation, both people leave the table a little bit like, I gave a little more than I wanted to there. Both parties.
Yeah, that's not a thing. That might be your experience, but
that's a negotiating thing. You Google that stuff.
You can Google it, but I disagree. We can continue on that discussion later, but people who are teaching negotiation don't tell people that you leave the table losing more than you like giving up more than you thought you should. That is definitely
Maybe I
not.
worded it wrong, but it's something like that.
What you're trying to get to is win-win. So both people feel happy and comfortable and excited about whatever
It's
solution you come to.
it's both people leave the table a little bit uncomfortable in that
So in this situation, how did you leave the table uncomfortable? I'd like to know.
because I chopped in half. I didn't the the amount that we almost spent, I didn't spend.
But that's not because of our negotiation or our discussion. That's because you made a decision that you didn't want the more expensive one.
No, it was a little bit of both, to be 100% honest.
Well, that's disappointing
Why?
because maybe the more expensive one would have been a better decision.
Yeah, who knows? These are the things that we talk about.
And the thing that makes me feel frustrated when we're talking about this now, and you're saying that part of the reason that you got the cheaper one was because I didn't want to spend as much money,
But I
even though
did
I
tell
had
you that.
said, what?
I did tell you that.
You did tell me what?
Why I thought it was a better idea to buy the cheaper one.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with money.
I did,
It didn't.
actually. Okay.
No. I said that I relinquished all decision making on this particular thing. I told you that it didn't matter in the big scheme of things. The amount of money we're talking about is not significant in our finances, and that you had 100% control of making this decision.
I
And
know.
I completely backed down.
I
That's
know.
how this was resolved, not you came away from the in my opinion. It was not that we came away and we both gave away something. We came to the table and I gave you all the control. And so if you
No,
don't
no,
like
I
the
wasn't
outcome
I
of this,
wasn't
that makes
talking
me really
No,
frustrated.
I wasn't talking about I know you gave me the complete control, but I'm just saying that I could have gone either direction. And the reason that I went one of the reasons that I went in the other direction had to do with spending the extra money. I agreed with you a little bit. I was like, that is a lot of money. So I'm just saying it was a factor. It was a factor in my decision that you gave me 100% to make.
Hmm.
Anyway, that being said, the creating that place of safety, um, trying to have a conversation instead of an escalation is the goal. That's basically what we've learned and what we can do sometimes, and others we don't do so well. But we usually get our back around to that, don't we? We always get back to the conversation.
We do. Sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes I have to take a time out and take a bunch of deep breaths and maybe even go for a walk and calm myself down because it never works well if I am feeling really pissed off.
Yeah, this is true.
The good news is that I don't get pissed off nearly as often, as you work on trying to listen to your thoughts and figure out your emotions and let some of the shit go. It seems like the times where I'm angry are further apart, except for lately.
Yeah,
So
let
that
that
kind
shit
of
go.
sucks.
I want to get one of those shirts too. We got to get those shirts. We like them.
Yeah, the ones that say "let that shit go."
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, it's interesting because I wanted to brush up on creating crucial conversations. It's a great book about communication and especially difficult conversations. It's written, and we've talked about it many times. It's written for business, so it's a little bit of a dry read, but it applies to everything. Like we laugh and talk about how we wish we had read it instead of all the parenting books that we read because
That didn't work.
most of the parenting books we read didn't have very good advice, and had we just learned how to communicate a little better, I think we would have had better outcomes with our kids.
And
And
if
a
you're
lot of what sorry, go ahead.
oh, I didn't, you took a pause and I thought I could go, but
Yeah,
now
go
it
ahead.
sounds like I'm interrupting you. I
Well,
was just going to say we've talked about the book a bunch, and that if you listen to all of our podcasts, you guarantee you've heard us mention this book 10 times, maybe.
yeah,
And
probably.
if you've heard us mention it 10 times and you haven't read it yet, get off your ass and read it. If you only heard us mention it this once, still get off your ass and read it because it's a fantastic book.
It
And
is a
back to
good book.
Sam.
And so I wanted to brush up on they have this idea that we're talking about this creating safety in conversations and how they explain the best way to do that. And they talk about creating mutual purpose and mutual respect. And you were saying, like I keep throwing little jabs at you about even after we made this decision to make this purchase together, that I still keep throwing jabs, and that probably doesn't establish safety. It's probably not a place of
Yeah, I still
mutual
don't feel
respect.
safe. I had a really good analogy. Can I say it?
Yes.
You gave me you agreed to let me steer the ship, but then you keep taking shots over the bow. I thought that was really clever.
Oh,
That was what I said earlier, and you're like, oh, really?
I thought you were talking about where you're driving your hands are on the steering wheel, but that was the totally different.
Oh, it's kind of the same thing. It's like you said make the decision, but then there's some darts coming after the fact. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, there weren't many. It was just
No, I know.
pointing out the obvious, like,
Yeah, I
oh
know.
shoot.
I know. It's all good. We're good, baby.
So I don't feel like those are shots over the bow.
I said sometimes I feel like that. We had a conversation while we were walking, and it was a good conversation because I was feeling defensive. I took some deep breaths, and then I told you how I was feeling. So that was a win. We should share a win there on that conversation because it's after the fact. It was about the same thing that we're going to end up disagreeing on probably more than once in our lives going forward, if not 100.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what we need to work on this week. We're inviting everybody else to do it with us.
Did you feel like we did at all create mutual? I feel like at one point of the conversation we created mutual purpose where we talked about how we would both benefit from this, the purchase of this thing.
Yeah.
And that in the big scheme of things, it's a drop in the pond and it wasn't,
Right.
But the mutual respect thing, when you are angry and you're, saying things like, what the fuck? That isn't
yeah,
it's definitely not building safety.
What the fuck usually
Creates
raises my guard.
But there are other things though that, I guess there's lots of ways where you can piss each other off.
Yeah. That is our message for today. I don't have a ton more, do you?
No, I'm tired of talking about this kind of. We had an argument yesterday about this podcast and doing this podcast about this because I felt like we
had more work to do.
We have more work to do. And so I was like, well, we're not really experts on this. We're just like really fumbling around trying to figure out what's going to work better.
Well, we kind of are because we can point to the exact things that we know will help us. Whereas before we read that stuff or wrote that stuff, we couldn't point to anything. We just kind of, you know what I mean? So we know where to look, and we righted the ship, but our message is we got shit we got to work on, and we're just sharing it with you guys. And because we're sharing it with you guys and telling you that we still have to work on this stuff, you can work on it with us if you want.
Yeah.
We'll tell you how we did.
Better communication doesn't hurt anything.
I do want to make one plea. We could really use some new podcast reviews. So if you're new to this podcast and you've never left us a review anywhere, that would be fantastic. Or if you're old to this podcast and you've never left us a review, that would be super appreciated. And same thing with the book. And the audiobook is out. I think we've mentioned that a couple of times. And we put out on our last podcast that anybody that left a review took a picture of it and emailed it to us, either at patrick@biggerlove.com or sam@biggerlove.com. We would send you a code.
Oh yeah, so you could get a free Audible.
So get the Kindle. It's like 99 cents. Leave a review, and then we'll send you a free audiobook. I mean, come on, people. That's a freaking screaming deal.
Will you send them an audiobook if they leave a podcast review and do the same thing?
Yeah, I've got I'll do 2 audiobooks for the podcast and 2 for we'll give away 4 books. So I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but if you leave a review for both, then we'll do something even more maybe.
Yeah, actually, we have all these T-shirts that we
Oh
ordered
yeah, we could send you a
for our
free
advanced
T-shirt.
reader team, and then we gave them all away, but had some other people that had left reviews, so we needed to order more. And then the new ones came, and they're messed up. Now we're waiting for the
Yeah, the color was wrong, and there were a
colors
couple of them that
wrong.
were bad. So I sent, and I'm going to give that company some props too, because they are Johnny on the spot on handling problems, handling orders, communicating. But we're big fans of 4 Imprint.
Yeah, the number 4 imprint. They do really good swag.
Yeah. So
we're waiting. Now we're waiting for the new run of the shirts.
But they told us to keep the other ones. They're like, don't bother sending them back. So the color's a little bit off on our logo, but
And they need to be like there's some kind of
some of
weird
the
film
really
on the
extra,
inside
some of
of
the
them.
extra smalls, I got to throw them in the washer before I send them out because they're where the iron
there's some
left the
gooey
film
stuff
in there.
there.
But they said it'll wash right off. So we're gonna do that. But there's a ton of them that don't have that. So
so you're saying we have some T-shirts too that we can give away if people are leaving.
Yeah, but we got to mail those. So that's gonna set us back like $5 on shipping.
And the cost of the shirt.
We're not supposed to pay for reviews.
Oh. Well, I wasn't thinking that we were, but but I guess in a way
we got some shit.
There's some bribery.
leave us some reviews and we'll send you some stuff. And specify too, if you've already got the book and you don't want the Audible, and you'd love to have a T-shirt, just let us know. Reach out, say hi.
Yeah.
Let us know you're listening. That would be cool.
Yeah. Throw us an email, get on our Facebook page or Instagram. All right.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Hope everybody's
hear you next week, or talk at you next week.
I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy and happy, and we're sending our love and our good vibes to you and your families.
Bigger love to everybody.
Bigger love to everybody. All right. Bye.